What suggestions do you have for preparing for that interview process? And what kinds of things are you looking for in the interview process?
So the interview is really an opportunity to add texture to your application to really kind of bring it to life. I think the thing that I caution candidates against the most is don't reuse the stories you've used in your essays. It's great to hear something new about you and for you to share some things that we don't know yet. We're really looking for you to be able to articulate that journey from where you've been to where you want to go and why the MBA is important and how it fits into that plan that you have.
All right, excited to get the podcast today going. GradTalk MBA by Magoosh. Um, Thanks for joining us today, Melissa. We have Melissa Rapp, and we'll get into her introduction in a second. First of all, I'm Eric Allen. I'm the general manager here at Magoosh, and Magoosh an ed tech company aiming to level the playing field for candidates applying, providing high quality test prep and admissions services. So, with that introduction out of the way, I'm very excited to have Dean Melissa Rapp, and we've known each other for a while and excited to continue the conversation and now have the opportunity for the viewers and the listeners out there to learn a little bit more about you. How are you, Melissa?
I am so good, Eric. It's so good to see you, and I'm delighted to be here today. I'm Melissa Rapp. I'm the Associate Dean of Graduate Admissions at Goizueta Business School. I've been at Goizueta for 4 years, and prior to that, I was at Kellogg, Northwestern's business school for a long time, and just love this space, love helping people figure out if an MBA is the right thing for them and if it's the right time. And so excited to talk some more with you today.
Excellent. So, first thing we always have to get out of the way is help everyone out there pronounce the name of the business school so they can do it appropriately. So, when they get their admissions letter, they can yell and scream it the right way.
At the top of their lungs. It's funny during my interviews when I was interviewing for this job, I avoided saying it because I wasn't even sure how to say it. But it's a Goizueta, so it's kind of like goy and then a sweater. So Goizueta.
Excellent. So thank you. So you've been doing this for a bit of time. I'd really love to know, like, either like how you got in the industry or like what keeps you here. And then I want to know a little fun fact about yourself because Kellogg and and Emory are very different. And so I'd love to know kind of like, something fun that like maybe the reason why you stay in this industry, the reason why you look at different schools, and then a fun fact about you.
Sure. So I know some of my counterparts in admissions get into admissions by way of the MBA. They have a great experience at school and then they move into the admissions space. I actually came up through higher education. My entire professional career has been in higher education. I am an advocate for lifelong learning, really believe in the power of additional academic experiences to help propel people into spaces where they couldn't access before. And so I get a lot of satisfaction out of my job. I have, I think, one of the best jobs in the world. The idea that of all the hundreds of people who I've admitted to business school, I truly, in my heart, believe that a lot of them will go on to do amazing things, and that a few of them will become household names and will do the kinds of things that really change the world, that have a positive impact through business on society. And while I know that person deserves all the credit, I enjoy knowing that I had a small piece of their journey that rested in my hands. I think professionally, admissions is such a dynamic place to work. It's always changing. You're always interacting with new people, which is exciting. And within higher education, it has very much like a business like function. We cover marketing and we cover sales and we cover all sorts of different functions that make my job really exciting. And I get to work with the best people in the world. So I absolutely love my job. I love being in admissions. Graduate admissions has been a really fun space for me to be in. And MBA admissions, again, just the caliber of people and the stories that we get to hear year after year of people's journeys and where they've come from and what they hope to do. It really inspires me and gives me confidence that everybody's going to be okay. Things may get rocky, but there are so many good people in the world who are ready to do great things, and with arming them with an MBA helps them to do that. And so I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, it's like it's kind of fun to hear that. Like, I think some of your joy is kind of like you're at this foundation of hope, right? Like when you go to business school, people come in with, they're not jaded like you may get in the business world over time. They're like they have this hope, and it's like you can just be part of creating more hope for society, which is a fantastic feeling. However, I am not going to let you get off that easy because you still owe me a fun fact about yourself. So,
A fun
are
fact.
you a foodie? Are you a yogi? What are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a sailor. I think that's the fun fact that when I'm not in admissions, I'm not looking at applications and crunching numbers, I am out on a sailboat. And so that started for me when I was really young. My husband and I bought a boat together before we were ever even married. And we've continued, we're on our ninth boat during our marriage. And so we've sailed the Great Lakes, and now in Atlanta, we keep a boat on Lake Lanier. So that's probably the fun fact that I'll give you today.
All right, great. So I'm like thinking about a boat, but like not a sailboat. So we're gonna have to talk after this to figure out all the tricks of the trade. So I think I know who to go to now. Well, let's pivot a little bit to your role at Goizueta. So when you think of differentiation, so many candidates, right, when they're thinking about applying, they're like, oh, this should be pretty easy, right? I'm going to go to U.S. News and World Report, or I'm going to like just go to like a tour, and I'm going to do some Google searching, and it should be really easy. And they get into it, and they're like, wow, they all sound pretty amazing. So how do you differentiate, or how do you position, Emory for differentiation among other business schools? Like, how do you want to be known?
Yeah, so I think Emory does offer something unique and of value. And there's three aspects of that that we really key in on and talk about. One is our size. So Emory is among the smallest of the top 20 MBA programs. This year, we'll bring in a class of 2-year MBAs. That's about 130 students. And then our 1-year MBA class is about 40 students. And so that small size is really unique and gives students the opportunity to really engage and connect with their classmates. There's a limit to how many people you can really get to know in any one given scenario. That 130 number really allows you to connect with the majority of people in your class. It also provides our faculty the opportunity to engage in a richer way with every student because there aren't as many students to try to cover. And so our faculty, I like to describe it as they are thick as thieves with our students. They are discussing current issues, they are thinking about businesses, they're acting as mentors for startups and side hustles. They give out their text me anytime, come over for dinner. It really does feel like a bonded community. It also helps out in career management. So our coaches, again, are spending more time with students, really getting to know them and planning out personal approaches to their career search. So I think our small size is really important. It is key to who we are. That intimate learning environment is something that I think makes us unique. Also gives students a real opportunity at meaningful leadership. Because of our size, we can't really have anybody who's like, I just want to blend into the background. I'm going to take it easy for the next 2 years and let everybody else do everything. We are looking for the people who want to show up, be engaged, and add value to the community from day one. So the small size is the first thing. I think the second thing is being in Atlanta. Having lived most of my life in the Chicago area, moving to Atlanta was definitely a change, but I've really come to appreciate Atlanta's kind of, it's a younger city. It has this energy and excitement around building itself up and becoming even greater than it is. And I think what we've seen is the amount of civic engagement, civic discourse that happens in Atlanta is really unique to the city because of its diversity and its makeup. And I think that really enriches our students' experience as well. And so, those two things, along with the quality of our faculty and the rich academic experience, really make Goizueta an exciting, rich place to be as a student.
That's fabulous. You talked about Atlanta a little bit, and I think that Atlanta has changed a lot, over the last 15, 20 years. Um, I've seen more entrepreneurship, I've seen more tech, I've seen, and that's kind of building on top of that traditional kind of marketing, healthcare, and all of those things that Atlanta brings. How have you seen kind of Atlanta change, and like how are you engaging with the broader Atlanta area and the companies in that area to build some of those ecosystems, right? Around growth in technology, growth in entrepreneurship, and other areas that I may not be mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a diversity of companies coming to Atlanta. As you said, building on some of those more traditional companies, your Home Depot, your Delta, your UPS. I think people are recognizing that the Southeast is continuing to develop and is a great place of opportunity. So we've seen both as a school and faculty engage with the community in some really fantastic ways. Partnerships, capstone experiences, internships, bringing in industry leaders to speak to classes, to speak to the whole school, really looking for ways to allow our students to take advantage of the access. And Goizueta is 100 years old. We were here when UPS came into town. We were here when Delta really started to become a major player. And so we have those relationships and have had them for years. So our students really benefit not just from the companies just being here and the access to so much industry, but to our alumni who are in all levels of those companies. And continuously, one of the things, the byproducts of this small community and those deep bonds that students make are I have never heard of an alumni turning their back on a fellow person from Goizueta. There is always a feeling of these are my people. And so when we see some of these emerging industries, fintech and entrepreneurship coming into Atlanta, we're seeing ways that our students have been invited into those spaces as well and are really looking at some interesting connections and opportunities through those companies and through the industries that just keep growing here.
That's great. A lot of excitement in Atlanta and also on campus. So that's fabulous. Thanks for sharing. What is something that you would say that is not captured on the website, maybe about Goizueta, but like you definitely want to drive home to candidates who are watching this podcast? Like, what is it? Like, what's the one thing that you would say it's so difficult to capture? We try to, but it doesn't do justice to the school that you want to drive home.
So for me, it is a characteristic of our faculty, and that is that they are so, I describe it as irrationally passionate. Like, there is no reason why someone should care so much about some of the things our faculty care about and are so passionate about. And if you're ever around somebody who has a niche interest but is crazy about it, they know everything and you can sense that excitement when they talk about it. Like, let's be real, accounting and P&L, I don't know, is it that exciting? But when you talk to Usha Ratcliffe, one of our faculty members, you think it is the most fascinating thing in the world. because she is so passionate about it. There's no good reason for her to be that passionate about her topic, but she is. And that kind of energy and commitment and passion in the classroom makes the learning so much more enjoyable. It sticks with you in a much more genuine way. So that, and how do you capture that on a website, right? Like there's no way to really get that. We video her, and this goes for several of our faculty. We video them, we talk to them, we do interviews with them. But when you're in the classroom, it takes it up another notch. You're at a whole different level. And that irrational passion just makes the experience so exceptional.
All right. So when I'm doing my quarterly and my year end financials, I'm gonna see if I can find a YouTube video that can get me excited from that professor. I'm excited to explore that a little bit and find that passion that I may be missing around financials. All right. So a lot of our the folks at Access and Magoosh come from underrepresented backgrounds or under resourced backgrounds, areas like that. What are some of the things that you do broadly across the business school to provide support for underrepresented and under-resourced financially or otherwise candidates?
Yeah, so I think again, Atlanta by nature is a very diverse city, and so DEI, thinking about underrepresented minorities, is nothing new to us. We've been doing it for years, and there's a deep commitment. It's one of our core values. And so I think there's multiple layers here. So we do offer merit-based scholarships and are always looking at ways to help students who maybe come from less resource backgrounds to attend Goizueta. We also have a DEI concentration. So I think that does a couple of things. It really reflects the commitment that Goizueta has to diversity, but also acknowledges that DEI is it's not going away. It is something that is important for every business leader to understand and be able to navigate while they're leading organizations and people. So that DEI concentration, I think, is really important for all of our students to understand the impact that backgrounds have on people and how they show up in the workplace. We also have a dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, that deep level commitment and investment in having that as reflected as a core value, showing up in the curriculum, showing up in the co-curricular activities. We do one of the small things that we do is every year Goizueta does a common read. And so that's not just for students. That's not us just saying, hey, students, you need to learn about this. So here's a book and you should talk about it. It is students, faculty, and staff and school leadership all participating. And so you're getting insights and again, building connections to people who you may not, interact with every day. And I think that spirit of connecting, that spirit of discourse, that these are things we're going to talk about. Part of the reason you come to business school is to have hard conversations with people who don't think like you do. And that's part of why every year we work at building a really diverse class and taking diversity in lots of different angles, both ethnic, gender, industry, function, background, all of those things. Um, when you sit down next to someone who comes from a very different place than you and approaches problems differently than you, you're both going to learn something. That's a really important part of being an MBA and learning at a place like Goizueta is that understanding that everyone shows up differently and you show up differently than other people, but there are ways to make that work. And in fact, it makes your work even better.
Wow, that was fabulous and genuine and so you. So thank you for going into depth on that. I know the audience appreciates that as well. Let's transition a little bit to kind of the application and preparing for the application. So, as a candidate who's maybe just starting this process or thinking about this process, How much time would you say you should set aside for preparing for this whole application process, including thinking about it, contemplating it, and then getting through it? Like, do you have any recommendations for the candidate who's maybe just getting started?
Yeah, for the candidate who's just getting started, I think you're in a great position. I think it really takes 3 to 9 months. And I know that seems like a really wide range of timing, but some of it just depends on how you can carve out time. Some careers and some people are in spaces where they're just really busy. And so finding pockets of time to really devote to this can be difficult, but it's so important to do the due diligence, to ask questions. You talked earlier, right at the beginning, about how you think this is going to be straightforward, and then you kind of start to get into it, and it's harder than you anticipate. And this is one of those processes I found that everyone has an opinion about. So as soon as you say thinking about going to graduate school, then suddenly people you didn't even know had an MBA are like, oh, well, if you're going to do that, you should. And people who don't have an MBA have opinions. So there's a lot of opinions that start to maybe muddy the waters. And so I think the number one thing for candidates to really think about is, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? Not what other people think I should be looking for, or what other people are saying is the most important thing. The honest truth is, there are a lot of schools that provide a fantastic experience. I have a lot of respect for all of my colleagues that I work with. I hear about the things they're doing, and I'm like, that is amazing. That's a really great opportunity. And there's a place for everyone. And keeping those two things in mind, I think, will help people manage some of the anxiety that can build up during this process. If you don't get into the top 5 schools, you're going to be okay. If you get into the top 5 schools, you're going to be okay. The schools have developed great curriculums, great experiences. And I think it's important for people to find their place. And that's going to look different for different people, because schools do have different personality, just the way cities have different personalities. Some people love New York and some people love LA. And that's okay. And they're both great cities. So I think if you come into this process with a real genuine approach and keep in mind what your priorities are, you're going to find your place and you're going to be great. I honestly can't even remember your question, so I hope I answered it. If not, tell me what it
No.
was again.
Well, for not remembering my question, you certainly did a great job answering my question. So, talking about, like, what a candidate needs to do to prepare in the time. So, really appreciate that. I want to actually talk to you about the admissions part of the application. But even before that, I thought about something kind of school for everyone, which we talk a lot about here at Magoosh as well. Emory was one of the first programs that I remember that had the 1 year MBA program and really had that established. My brother went through the 1 year MBA program at Goizueta, so I know a lot about it and the value of it. Can you talk about 1 year versus a 2 year program? Like, how you see that program offering, really providing a comprehensive offering to candidates who could need one or the other, and how to think about 1 year versus 2 year.
Of course. And I love having a 1 year program because I think it does provide an option that is really appealing to a group of people. And those people typically are either accelerating in the industry that they've already worked in or in the function that they already work in. So if you're making a major pivot, thinking something like engineering to consulting, that's a major pivot. You don't really have anything on your resume that gives you credibility in the consulting industry. That's what the internship is for. But if you're in finance and you're going to continue in finance, you already have credibility on your resume. The 1 year MBA is a great option for people who already have that credibility and aren't looking to make a major pivot. It takes you out of the workforce for just 1 year. At Emory, it starts in May and it ends almost exactly a year later in May again. So we do graduation on a Friday, and the 1 year MBA class arrives for onboarding that next Monday. So it's always kind of a busy weekend, but a really fun one. You do your core classes in the summer, and then you move into electives during the fall and spring. What's great about it is those electives are taken alongside second year, 2 year MBAs. So you're getting not just exposure and network opportunities with your cohort, but really the whole school. You get the same level of career services, you get the same global experience as well. But again, it's just that shorter timeline. It's not a watered down MBA. We don't take away any of the experiences. It just is condensed, and it's able to be condensed because you don't need the internship to build credibility in your resume. It is a great option. The other thing that I love about our 1 year MBA is that it has really become appealing for a lot of students who are looking for a dual degree. So we see a lot of students from our divinity school getting an MDiv MBA. We have MD MBAs. We have MPH from our public health school MBAs. And even for students who aren't getting a dual degree, again, that gives you this exposure to people who are outside of your typical circle, your industry circle, in really interesting ways. That class is really dynamic and very interesting to talk to because we do have all of these students who are coming from different backgrounds to do the 1 year MBA program.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really great opportunity for those folks, as you say, like, industry function, you want the MBA, and then you still get a chance to kind of have this other cohort that you get to engage with. So you feel connected to the community. So a really fabulous opportunity for those of you who are interested in the MBA, but maybe kind of see that as you really are focused in trying to stay in a space that you already know, and you get kind of the best of both worlds, if you will. So thanks for sharing that. As we get into the application in general, let's start talking about kind of the nuts and bolts. I know that you look at every application holistically and all of that, but would you say that there's a part of the application where you kind of say, like, this is something that maybe candidates don't spend enough time on, but maybe you should spend more time on, because it's really a unique opportunity for me to see something X, Y, or Z, right? Authentic or very clearly. Like, is there something in the application where it's like, you have admissions consultants and you have test prep advisors and all that. So the application, numbers can get skewed in certain ways if you have more resource and all that. But is there something in the application where you're like, that's my true north. And when I really dig into an application and see that, I know that I have something with a candidate.
I think the applications that I enjoy the most and that I'm always like, hey, this is something special, is the one where the student has taken a risk in some way in being vulnerable in talking about their story. I think a lot of times when we hear advice about applications, it's put your best foot forward, talk about your accomplishments. And I think the honest answer is we learn more from our mistakes than some of the things that weren't mistakes. And so when a student or a candidate really digs deep and shares with us a time when they faltered or they really hit a challenge that set them back, and they're able to articulate what they learned from that and how they've moved forward, that's good stuff. That really shows a level of self reflection and awareness that, to me, indicates someone who's reached a level of maturity where they can admit they did make a mistake, but that they learned from it. And that's going to happen to people throughout their careers and going to be really important as they lead other people. That moment of vulnerability to be able to say, hey, I didn't get this right, but can we figure it out, is really important as a leader. And so I think when students are able to do that on an application, it really indicates to me that they're ready for the MBA experience, because a lot of it is hearing things from people, again, who don't think like you, getting that feedback and being okay with learning from it.
Oh, I love that. So for those of you listening, rewind it about a minute and listen to that again, because I think that is probably some of the best advice that you can possibly get in the application process, because business is about failing, but it's about failing fast and learning from your mistakes and perseverance. And if you can share that and talk about what you learned from those mistakes, you probably are going to be very good at this whole business thing, because that's what it's all about. Like, there's so much failing that people don't talk about. They only talk about the successes. So fabulous advice. Rewind, listen to it again, do whatever you have to do, but make sure that that gets inside of your brain. When you think about elements of the application, let's go into recommenders, for example. What advice do you have for choosing the best recommenders? Because oftentimes we hear like, okay, you work at a bank, they know how to write recommendations. They do it, 15 a year or whatever, right? Um, but when you go maybe somewhere that's not used to kind of writing recommendations for, say, business school, like, an engineering background or something like that, non-traditional, slightly non-traditional, right? In that sense, it can be a little challenging because maybe they're like not used to talking about a candidate in the way that say a business or a finance company might talk about a candidate. So, what recommendation do you have for choosing recommenders and also for preparing them to write a recommendation that is expected from a top candidate?
Yeah. I think it's really important to choose someone who you have a genuine relationship, who has seen you work and understands how you work. Sometimes we get asked, should I use this alum who works in my organization, but I know them, but I don't work with them. It's not gonna be in your best interest to pick that person, even though they're affiliated with the school. It's much better to have someone who genuinely knows you. And I think you approach it almost like a little project, a mini project with the person. I think you take the time to schedule some time with them, to talk with them about why you want an MBA, and maybe remind them of some of the things that you've accomplished, that some of the impact you had, again, maybe some of the challenges that you've overcome. The folks who are asked to write letters of recommendation are often very busy people, and they're often asked by more than one person. So giving them a window of time that is reasonable for them to digest the information that you've shared, your updated resume, and so forth, and then to submit the application, and being kind of a good shepherd of the process, sending reminders, following up in a professional way, really does help that process along. And then like I said, I think sharing with them why you want to do this, why you've chosen the schools that you have. So setting up a 20-30 minute meeting with an agenda where you can just walk through, I've enjoyed working with you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Here's some things that I've thought about in relation to this process. Here's why I'm getting an MBA, why I've chosen these schools. And then please be a good person and follow up with a genuine thank you note, and let them know what happens with your application. Once you've put in some time into writing a letter of recommendation, you definitely want to know what happens. So, take the time to send a coffee gift card or something and a nice thank you, and definitely let them know what happens.
Yeah, I love that. Writing recommendations over the years, just that little, like, that genuine thank you, even just a, like, I love letters, but like a text, just like, a very thoughtful, like, hey, here's what happened. Thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. It goes a long way. Like, people really do take their time, and their time is tight, right? So for them to invest in you, you certainly owe it to them. So thanks for saying that. What the interview process, which is a really unique opportunity for candidates to really speak to who they are, and for you to learn, like, does the application kind of tie in with the candidate? What suggestions do you have for preparing for that interview process, and what kinds of things are you looking for in the interview process?
So the interview is really an opportunity to add texture to your application to really kind of bring it to life. I think the thing that I caution candidates against the most is don't reuse the stories you've used in your essays. It's great to hear something new about you and for you to share some things that we don't know yet. We're really looking for you to be able to articulate that journey from where you've been to where you want to go and why the MBA is important and how it fits into that plan that you have. So I think spending a little time mapping out, okay, I've talked about this in my essay and I talked about this. I'm going to save this for my interview, or I'm going to build on what I talked about in my essay, because you don't know. In some schools, they will have, your interviewer may have read your essay, other places they won't yet. But at some point, it all comes together. And so being able to share something that is new about you. And I also just don't overthink the interview. I think it's so important to be genuine. And some of the interviews that we're not crazy about are the ones where someone is very, very scripted, because it just feels stiff. We don't want robots in our classroom. We want you to be able to engage and show your enthusiasm. So don't overthink the interview.
Excellent. And just for viewers, is Goizueta blind or have they read their application before the interview?
We do blind interviews at Goizueta. So your interviewer has not read your application, but your interviewer's write up or their report on the interview then will get put into the application file and someone will get to see all of it at one time.
Excellent. So let's step inside the admissions committee. One of the things that we hear a lot is that candidates want to know, like, how does it actually work there, and like how is their application being viewed? We know you have such a challenging job where you have, however much time you have to look at each application and review each application. But can you give us kind of a high level overview, like an inside peek, if you will, of what committee is like, and maybe how external parties are brought into the process when necessary, whether it's career services or professors or whatever. Does that happen at all?
Yeah, so there's a lot of snacks and coffee involved in committee. Um, it's kind of a grind, but in a weird way, it's super fun too. Like I always kind of look forward to, we're hunkered down in a conference room and we're, talking about people, and it is fun in a way. So I think the thing for students or candidates to really sit on for a minute is that we at Goizueta, at least, we're not comparing you to the other candidates. We're looking at each person and we have developed a rubric that tells us what the ideal candidate looks like. And we're looking at you against that rubric. So we're taking you as an individual and looking at what is their ability to handle the rigor of the academic classroom. How will they contribute to our community? What ways have they created impact or innovation in the spaces they've been? What are they like to work with? And we're not saying what does Johnny look like next to Pete. We're really looking just at Johnny and saying, how does he measure up to the ideal Goizueta candidate? And then we're looking at Pete. So it isn't a competition, really. It's a matter of how do you measure against what great looks like here. So that's one thing that I think is really important. And then we do have what I would call subject matter experts. So folks from our career management center or our program offices who really do the day-to-day work of working with students when they're here on campus if we have something that we think is questionable. So for example, work experience. We do get candidates who have less than average years of work experience. They may only have one or two, but it's really rich. It's really robust. But we may have our colleague from the Career Management Center have a look at that file and just confirm, yeah, this person is going to do great. They have, although it has been a short tenure of work experience, it is rich enough for them to be able to contribute to the community and be successful in their career search. So there's other examples of similar things where we're like, well, this person didn't do great in undergrad, but we see evidence of them being able to be successful in the classroom. It's in admissions best interest to make sure that our uh, collaborative partners across campus are aligned with our decisions, because if they're not, we'll hear about it down the road if someone doesn't do well, which rarely happens, but we do like to bring in people to give their opinions if we have some questions.
Yeah, and like building on that, Melissa, like you know, it's a challenging job, right? Because you obviously have to bring in the class, and you have to filter through all those candidates. But then you have these stakeholders on the back end, right? You have the academic, you have the professors, and they can turn the volume up every now and again, right? So how do you think about all of those different stakeholders in your mind? Are you just like, after the class comes in, you get the feedback and you reshape it. But then during application season, you're like, focus, you're like, I know what I have to do. I got the feedback. And now maybe you're tweaking it. Or is it more of an active thing where there's like more involvement, engagement from the stakeholders?
It's a little more active. We're constantly meeting with. I'm constantly meeting with our cross-functional partners to get feedback on how students are doing, what trends are they seeing in classroom performance and engagement in co-curricular activities, things like that. And we're always looking at applications and thinking about how is this person going to show up in the class? How are they going to be able to do? I don't want to bring anyone in that I don't feel like can be successful here. And so, it is always a balancing act. It is always, we know that there are going to be students who excel in one area and maybe need additional help in other areas. But the MBA is designed to be a growth experience, so we don't expect people to come in knowing everything and having it all together. Like, part of the experience is you leave knowing all the things and having everything pretty much put together. And so I think there are no perfect candidates. We definitely can probably find something about nearly all of our candidates that we're like, well, you know, accounting might be a little hard for this guy, but he's going to be okay. He'll figure it out. Everybody has something that they need to figure out while they're here. And it's just a matter of, if as long as the you're going to do well in these areas outweighs the you got to figure this out still, then that candidate looks pretty good.
That's great. And I think that really points to, for candidates who feel like they have to come in and have all this stuff buttoned up, you wouldn't be going into this program if you had all of that stuff, right? So it's great to hear that you're constantly working to kind of look at each candidate and figure out, the balance of their ability to be successful and the balance of the class. And I think that really speaks to the candidates understanding that, hey, you don't have to come in perfect to be successful. In fact, you probably won't. And so understanding that there is a balance to all of this is really a great insight. What is
Eric,
Goizueta's
one other
test
thing on
strategy?
that.
Yeah.
Can I say one other thing? I think it's important for candidates to know, and I have met thousands of candidates. I can't think of one who didn't have some kind of doubt about their candidacy. I mean, I worked with, 780 GMATs and 4.0 GPAs and rock star careers, and they have some doubt about their application. So when candidates are going through this process and they're like, man, I don't know, is this really me? Like, you're going to meet some incredible people just through the application process. If you go to any preview days or class visits or join an organization where you're exposed to other people who are applying, there will come a point in time when you look around the room and you're like, I don't know if this is the right room for me. Just know that in my experience, every person in that room thinks that at some point in time.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, when you get in that room, you're like, why am I here? But you deserve to be here. And I think, starting with the acknowledgement, like, and part of like what was really helpful about you sharing how you think about things is that it also acknowledges that you realize that people aren't perfect. And so what we try to do here is educate candidates who are applying to understand, like, this is not me saying it. This is not, you reading it. This is the person who's evaluating your application saying, it's okay. We know you're not perfect.
Yeah.
Share your authentic self. Tell us about those vulnerabilities, right? This is why this is so fabulous today, because you're really helping us understand that you're breaking down barriers in a way, right? Like, you're saying, like, it's okay. Like, tell us about it.
Yeah.
We understand it and we'll work through it, together, and then build a class that hopefully builds everyone up. And I think that that's what's so exciting about hearing from you, is that people can now realize, like, okay, like, maybe I do belong here, and maybe take that leap. So that's fabulous. Speaking of like taking that leap, test scores and testing in general can be challenging for folks. Let's acknowledge that. What is the strategy for testing there? Test optionality? Do you look at different tests? Do you look at any test differently than others? Walk us through that question that I'm sure you get a few times a day.
Yeah, just a few. So standardized testing is evolving as well, and that has, I think, some candidates really spinning as well. Like, do I take it now? Do I wait until the new formats come out with both GRE and GMAT? Bringing out new formats, I think there's more questions than ever around testing. Goizueta does offer a test waiver. It's designed for people who can demonstrate their quantitative abilities in other ways. So if you're a CPA, if you work in analytics, if you have a background that is strongly indicative that you are able to handle the rigor of the classroom, we do have a way for you to apply for a test waiver. I don't recommend a test waiver for everyone. I think the standardized test score continues to be a good way to reinforce to the admission committee that you can handle the rigor of the academic classroom, especially if you are coming from an undergraduate that was maybe liberal arts heavy, or you've had a career that is outside of some of the more typical business type careers. It also just does demonstrate some of the qualities that we look for. We know these aren't super fun. Like, nobody wakes up on a Saturday and is like, hey, I'm going to go take that GMAT. That sounds like fun. It shows a certain level of grit, determination, commitment to the process. Most people do have to do some sort of preparation, some kind of studying, and I hope, no news, you're going to do a lot of studying when you're an MBA. And so being able to perform well, to manage your time so that you can prepare and to deliver a good score is more than just a good score showing that you can do well on a test. It does demonstrate some of those other qualities I talked about in being committed to this process and being excited about being a student again. So, I get it. They're not the most fun. We do take the GMAT. We accept the GRE. We actually also accept the LSAT and the MCAT. So if you've taken any of those standardized tests, we'll use those as a part of your application review. We don't look at any of them differently than the others. We don't have a preference for any test over another. But I think candidates should be really thoughtful about if a test waiver is in their best interest and not just a convenience factor.
Awesome. All right, let's get into. I have about 10 minutes left. We're going to get into fact versus fiction. And
Okay.
so I'm going to make a statement. You're going to say fact, fiction, and then you can give me a little short context, or you can just say, like, this was so easy. I'm not even going to give you feedback on it. So we'll play this game. We'll do a couple of these, and then we'll go into our rapid fire round. So are you ready, Melissa?
I am ready.
Awesome. Okay. Um, Fact or fiction? You have the best chance of getting in to business school if you apply in round one.
Fiction. I don't think there's a competitive advantage to any round, although I will say rounds one and two. Three is dicey. So if you can, especially if you're listening to this now, there's no reason to not apply in round one or two, but round one as a better chance, fiction.
Okay. So you talked about dicey. Let's get into dicey a little bit. So, fact or fiction, you can get scholarship fellowship money in round three.
Fact, you can't get as much and it is maybe a little less likely, but we always have some scholarship budget left for round three candidates.
Excellent. Fact or fiction, there is nothing you can do to get off the wait list. You have to wait for Melissa to say yes.
So that's a tricky one because the wait list is influenced by yield and by projections and some other things. So there are ways that you can position yourself well on the wait list. I think the first thing to do is if you get a waitlist decision is don't crumple. That is definitely not the end of the world and is in fact a positive thing. Um, we are always, every school that I know of and have worked at always goes to their wait list in some capacity. So do not lose hope. I think the important thing is to stay engaged and to stay enthusiastic. And I know that sounds hard when you're like, but I wanted to get in and I didn't get in. When we do start to look at the students on the wait list, and we don't rank our wait list, we look at it holistically. We're looking for people who have acknowledged that maybe they understand why they were on the wait list. So I know my GMAT wasn't great, and so maybe I take it again. Or, you know, we offer a webinar for all of our waitlist candidates. Definitely attend that. They'll share some more ideas in that. But stay enthusiastic. Continue to engage with the admissions team, continue to come to events. Those kinds of activities show that you genuinely want to be at a school, and schools want to admit people who want to be there. And so, even though it may seem futile, it isn't, to stay positive and to demonstrate that positivity to the admissions team.
Okay, that's great. So that will get you the Melissa pixie dust on your application if you do those things. That's
Okay.
fabulous. Um, okay, maybe another dicey one. Is there fact or fiction? There is no minimum work experience required for a full time MBA program at
There is
Goizueta.
no, that's fiction. You got to have some work experience. Uh, there are specialized master's programs that are business related that are great programs that you do not need to have work experience. But the MBA classroom drives on, is fueled by experience of the students sitting in it. You can't just show up and have nothing to talk about because the level of discourse in those classrooms is high, the level of engagement is high, and faculty members and your classmates are expecting you to show up with something to say. So you cannot roll into any top 20 business school with no work experience.
That was awesome. You were like, that's not true. Okay, last one, fact or fiction. The Atlanta area sweet tea is the best in the country. Fact or fiction?
Absolutely fact.
Absolutely
Absolutely.
fact.
There's
I
no,
can attest to that. Oh, yes. All right, cool. So that was really helpful. Rapid fire round. So in this round, I'm going to give you a phrase or word, and you're going to give me hopefully one word, but I will let you get away with it because we have a good relationship. with more than one word, and we're
Okay,
going to go through six of these, and you're going to give me that. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, very shortly. Number one, the perfect application.
Eric's, Allen's.
I think we can stop right now, stop the recording. I think we know that Melissa's clearly the best podcast of the year. Thank you very much. Um, Feeling of getting accepted into your dream program.
The best.
Absolutely, it sure is. The GMAT.
Ugh. I have no words.
I think we just got a word. Ugh. All right, admissions myths.
Don't believe them.
The top 20.
Not the only schools in the world.
I will let you slide on that one because it was a good answer. Okay, now Emory Goizueta.
Um, Wonderful.
Oh, wow. That was well done. The rapid fire round is over. Well, is there anything
Much.
that you want to say that we didn't get a chance to talk about? Then I will kind of give you the opportunity to talk about how folks can connect with Goizueta.
I think the thing that I hope candidates understand is that if you're thinking about doing this, you should do it. The timing's never going to be perfect. You're never going to have all the answers. And the hardest part is getting started. But this journey, I have seen it year after year, candidate after candidate. It is worth it. You are capable of it, and you should do it now.
Awesome. And what is the best way for candidates to engage with the admissions and recruiting team?
Yeah, so Goizueta has lots of opportunities. The best way is to get online, check out our upcoming events, and engage with the admissions committee through something like an Ask Admissions Anything session or an information session. Information sessions might be the best place to get started because you'll learn a lot about the programs and that'll give you some idea of questions to ask later. I really recommend that candidates do class visits at all the schools they're strongly considering because there's no better way to get to know what the experience will really be like than to sit either in person or virtually in a classroom and see the faculty members and how they teach and how the students react and what the discourse is like in that classroom. And then preview days are a lot of bang for your buck. So if you have the means to travel to some of the schools you want to potentially attend for one of their preview days that are held in the fall, I really recommend that as well. We love talking to candidates. We love getting to know you. And I think that's true for every admission person I know. So don't be afraid to connect with the team at the schools that you think you want to go to. It's funny to me how many every year we do an analysis and we have what we call stealth applications, and those are people who we really didn't engage with until they submit their application, and we're like, where have you been? Why haven't we gotten to know you? So um, I think it's important to really make the most of this application experience, not just the MBA experience. And it's a great opportunity to meet people, see places, and get to know programs. So take advantage of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. You are truly one of the most authentic, kindest people in the industry. Like you always have time for us, have always supported us. And I think like you as a leader really speak to what the program is about, right? Like your personality and what you bring to the table really, I think, trickles down into what the program is about. And I think we've heard some of that today. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. I know folks learned a lot from you today, and really thank you for being on Grad Talk MBA. You can find us at Grad Talk on TikTok and learn more about the MBA admissions process and the GMAT and GRE products at Magoosh.com. Melissa, thank you so much for everything. We look forward to seeing you, hopefully, candidates seeing you on campus and all of those resources. that you talked about, and we
Absolutely.
will certainly see you on a podcast in the future.
Sounds great, Eric. It is always good to see you. Thank you for the work that you're doing and helping make MBA more accessible to all sorts of people. Really appreciate it. Always love to see you. So thanks for having me.
No problem.